I want to talk to you about relationships and their importance in our masculine growth journey. Relationships matter because that's the way we see ourselves. Relationships matter because there are mirrors in front of our eyes, and that's how we view our own existence, our own growth, our own success, our own failures. As men, we tend to get lazy when we don't have relationships in ways where for a lot of us, it can turn into a detrimental experience. Like we don't keep our houses clean. We may not take care of our body the same way. We may not be taking care of the kitchen the same way. We let go of a certain amount of self-care. Now, similar thing can happen when you are in a relationship. If you come to the US, you see a lot of people that are in long-term relationships who are struggling with obesity. But in other elements, a relationship can become a journey of growth for you if you allow it to, and if you are self-observant enough to give yourself that window of opportunity. Relationships are also, at the very basic level, a source of communication. They are a tool for a man to express his social skills and demonstrate his ability, his fluidity to move through social interactions. Simply because in order for us to maintain a relationship or even achieve a relationship, shall we say, well, you have to be able to communicate with that person one way or another. You have to be able to say hello from the very moment you meet that person and be able to create a connection and have this level of social intelligence to be able to move this potential interaction forward and eventually shape it into a relationship. That process for most people takes a while. Although there are some other examples, like people who just fall into meeting someone and before you know it, in the next 3 days, that person becomes their girlfriend. And then 3 months later, they get married together. Fine. But for most human beings, especially those who are in heterosexual relationships, because women are very selective, this journey of meeting a woman and getting close to her and getting to know her and allowing her to open herself up to you takes a while, right? So all of that takes social skills. All of that takes social intelligence. All of that takes a sort of a initiative power from a man, right? It takes proactive skills for you to be able to move through all sorts of insecurities that you'll have from the moment you meet that person or see that person from afar. And then, the first date and second date and so on. So relationships, if we allow them to, they become mirrors of our own growth. What I see constantly is a lot of men are lost within this world of just picking up the next girl. And that's a great place to be, man. I wish you the best if that's where you're at. That said, I hope that at some point you find someone who's special enough and are able to at least commit to that relationship for like a year. For like a year and a half, right? Something beyond just 3 months and 6 months. If you look into psychological literature, somewhere around 3 years is when people move on from the honeymoon phase of a relationship. And so that's when people start to actually understand what they mean to one another, how well they get along. That is 3 years into being in a serious relationship, a relatively serious relationship. So the point I'm trying to make when it comes to relationships is that a lot of us dudes in our 20s and our 30s, we criticize ourselves for staying in a relationship for too long, and I've been one of those people. But if you don't stay in a relationship for just a little bit longer than your comfort zone, then what happens is that you don't recognize that this is not the place for you no more. And a lot of research also tells us that it's better to stay a little bit too long than to leave too early. Because when you leave too early, you always in the back of your head think, what if? And it's important to say goodbye to someone in your life, move on from a relationship if you feel the need, and not be lost in that what if. Not constantly be thinking of the past, because the more we think of the past, the less we are present, right? So you may move on from a relationship, but you're not really in this present moment. You're not really taking advantage of the opportunities that are present to you. And this goes for both parties, right? This is not just for you as a man or for you as a woman. This is for the other person on the other side too. So ending a relationship so early that there's always a what if in the back of our mind can actually be detrimental, because, you know, let's say you finish a relationship that was only 2.5 months long, and you know, you're happy about how you quickly realize that this is not the right person for you. But man, if you spend the next 3 years of your life kind of connecting with that girl, maybe hooking up with her from time to time, or just kind of living in this like what if space, and every time you meet someone new, they remind you of the girl that you already were thinking of, you're not really committing yourself to anyone new, and you're not really in this present space of existence either. You're sort of somewhere in between, and that's not really a healthy place to be. And the opposite of that would have been to stay with a girl maybe for 2-3 years and then move on. And even though that may feel like too much of a commitment, oftentimes when we move on at that moment, then we know it's over. We have no desire to look back. We are actually looking forward, looking ahead in life. And in some ways, that's healthier. Remember that life is going to move on one way or another, right? What you define as a waste of time, it's your definition of waste of time. Time is moving forward one way or another. It's not a matter of good or bad. It's your understanding of it that gives it that definition, right? For someone, a lifestyle that seems extremely toxic for you might be a wonderful choice. That person might actually live happily in a very miserable relationship, and such a hectic job that requires so much mental and physical discipline, and just drains their soul, and maybe they don't make enough money to get by, but that person might be okay with it. That person might go through an entire career living a decent life without feeling deprived of something they potentially didn't have. Now, there's all other ways of dissecting that conversation, but the point I'm trying to make is that if something feels uncomfortable for you, there's no reason for you to think that it may also feel uncomfortable for other people. And that's something I have to experience as a coach, right, on day-to-day basis, is that I cannot compare my own experience to the experience of my clients. My own journey, my own experience gives me a certain number of tools, a certain number of experiences and evidence and capabilities for me to be able to be present, to hold space for a client, to go through their own journey, not to be compared, not to match what I'm asking them to do, not to exactly follow my path in any way. Everybody's path is going to be entirely different. But what we arrive to yet again and again is that concept of how long should we maintain a relationship at certain times in our lives, right? Dude, if you're 17 and a half years old and you've been in a relationship for 3 months and it didn't work out for you, that's probably fine. You have a life ahead. You have so much time ahead, and chances are you may not even be living in the same place in the next maybe 2 or 3 years, right? You may be relocating, and so is she, perhaps. But if you're 39 years old and you haven't had a relationship for longer than 3 months, that's something different in my opinion. And that's something that a lot of people don't touch on. A lot of therapists, a lot of coaches, right? Because we tend to focus on that aspect of the freedom, the individualistic approach of life. But what we let go of is like, how much were you able to grow without having someone to trigger you, without having someone to point out your faults, right? quote unquote, because we don't know if they are or not, but they were to the eyes of, your potential partner, right? How much were you able to grow without having to compromise to somebody else's desire, someone else's needs from you? And how much were you able to manage your own personal time and your own personal growth, as well as maintaining a relationship and caring for that, and watering that plant of growth with that person for a while. So to my eyes, individual growth is heavily dependent on healthy relationships. And in some ways, those relationships don't always have to be healthy. That's probably why someone might approach me to be a client, right? Because they've been through a number of disastrous relationships. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Some of the most important figures in life have gone through just the shittiest relationships. But they allowed themselves to experience those and they moved on. They allowed themselves to experience another one, they moved on. It's okay if you don't learn the lesson on the first attempt. It's okay if you don't learn the lesson in 3 months. This journey of life is long, man. This journey of life is full of ups and downs, full of potentials in every single direction. And it's going to pull you from so many different places. It's going to take a lot of energy from all sorts of sources. And it's okay to go through that whole experience. It's okay to experience it fully and to allow it to take some of your time, because again, time is going by no matter what. It's okay to go through failures. It's okay to go through breakups and divorces. It does not define our existence. Just because you've been through 3 divorces or 3 breakups and they were all just devastating. This does not define you as a human being. This is only an experience you've had with, 3 people on the face of this planet of 7 billion. And in each experience, if you can identify something you've learned, something you have grown out of, something you were able to decide that you appreciated and wanted to maintain and keep and perhaps carry on into your next chapter of life, and something that you decided that you need to let go of. Whether it's a personal part of your identity, a personal character trait, or within another person. And I'll give you an example. I genuinely do not date someone who constantly cancels on me. If a woman, no matter how busy she is, if she says yes to a plan and then she changes her mind last minute, and I'm talking last minute, like there's a concert and 30 minutes before cancel, and she had confirmed 2.5 weeks ago, right? If someone cancels on me last minute, I am brutal about it. I do not give any second chances because I simply just don't have the time at this point in life, right? But I make sure I communicate that next time we connect. I make sure to let that person know that the reason why I'm going to step backwards now and not reach out, not invite that person anymore into my life is because she canceled on something that cost me a good amount of time, a good amount of energy, and just a desire to, spend that time with her. That's a very clear red line for me that I'm not willing to cross. Of course, if she gets in a car accident and she ends up in a hospital, it's a different story. But generally speaking, we are living in a culture of flakers, people who are constantly flaking plans, right? So that's only one example of something I've learned from relationships of the past, and I carry into any friendship, any interaction. This is not just a romantic thing for me. I am very strict with the way I approach my time on this planet. In summary, relationships do matter, and we should not judge ourselves for extending our relationships longer than a deadline that we would have had in our own imagination, right? Because it's more important to gain lessons from interactions, from relationships. Sometimes those lessons come from quick interactions, 3-5 minute conversation with someone that you'll never see again. Sometimes those lessons come from a relationship that lasted maybe a year or two longer than you would have liked. But the lessons are a part of our growth. Thanks, you guys. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video and you'd like to go on a journey of 3-month coaching with me, you may schedule a call with me. We can talk about it. It is an absolute joy to get to know you and to serve you and to watch you grow in the next 3 months together. Thank you.